Despite all the recent traveling I've done, the majority of my time as a photographer has been spent photographing the same place, Boston, Massachusetts. The city I grew up in and lived for pretty much my entire life. I now live in New York City and have seen so many new places in the past 3 years. Incredible places for photography, like Istanbul, Lisbon, Paris, and Venice, Morocco, and most recently a place I've wanted to photograph for such a long time, Japan. And every time I go somewhere new, I'm hit with an incredible feeling of inspiration. Everything is interesting. Everything is photographable. But the more I've been traveling, the more I'm realizing this can easily become a crutch. There will come a time where I can't travel as much, and I'm going to have to make do with wherever I am, just as I did in Boston. Maybe you're there right now. Wherever you are in the world right now, there's a part of town you haven't seen yet. Go there, and bring your camera with you. I got very complacent during my time living in Boston. I'd continuously go to the same parts of town because I knew them, and I knew that if I went there, the chances of me getting something I liked were pretty high. And while that worked for majority of the time, it led to a complacency in my work as well as my motivation to see anything new. Thoughts would go in my mind, Boston isn't interesting to me anymore, I wish I lived in New York. I need to get out of here. Yet rarely did I ever make the effort to actually see a new part of town. In my mind, they seemed like areas that wouldn't be interesting enough, that I wouldn't get anything good there. So I never actually made the effort to push myself to go there and see for myself. I regret not doing this more. And as crazy as it might sound to some of you, starting to feel a little bit of that feeling creeping into being here in New York City. Every time I visit New York, I always end up going to the same place. When I'm out with my friends, we joke, oh wow, we're walking down Broadway like every other day. Don't get me wrong, there's something to be said about continuously photographing the same places over and over. You gain a familiarity with that area and you know what to expect. You know you can make something, you're comfortable there. Or maybe you are purposely going to the same place all the time and you're working on a project. I think that is a separate thing, and that's totally cool and okay. If that's you, you're not finding the place that you're continuously going to uninspiring. I'm very much an environmentally inspired photographer, meaning I look to find things in my environment. I'm not too much interested in the people, but I like to include people and how they interact with my environment. So being in new environments is really invigorating to me and my work. When I go somewhere new, I feel like I've got all these new tools to work with. I think it's more powerful than any new camera you could put in my hands. Yet for whatever reason, going somewhere new in the city I lived in felt like a barrier I couldn't break through at times. And I know for a fact that I'm not alone in that feeling. I'm trying to push through that. So my friends Austin and Mate came out to the city and we plan to shoot together, but make it a point to shoot somewhere new, somewhere we haven't all shot together at before. The idea of Hudson Yards came up as a possibility, and I guess I've always steered away from that area because it is a pretty touristy part of the city. You have the High Line, of course, and this obscene looking vessel structure. Turns out it ended up being a really good place to shoot, especially for the way I shoot. kind of blown away by this really jarring looking red tree art installation. Was not expecting that, but I had a pretty good time photographing it. Also, being on the High Line, it gave me a really nice vantage point to shoot down, something I honestly don't do a lot of because I'm usually down there taking photos.
This is so sick. Dude, this is it used to look like this side right here was just the whole thing. So it used to be all unfinished, and it was like an urbex spot at one point. And just back in the day, at least based on photographs that I saw from like decades ago, when it was abandoned, there were people just coming up here. It was just like kids just coming up and doing drugs and whatever, like, but that's literally what it was. It looked like just like a sketchy spot. Yeah, I've had this, like, the wall of this, I've had it pinned in my maps for like, I want to say like almost a year. I don't know when this reopened, but I came here back in like the winter with some family friends, my girlfriend, and I tried to find it and it was just closed off. So they were probably installing this part, the walkable section. But yeah, man, this is a sick spot.
I'm really glad we went here, and I'm glad I did it with Mate and Austin. Going somewhere new and bringing some friends with you along the way is really a great way to help break out of that slump and provide a little bit more inspiration to go to a new place. And if it doesn't work out and you don't take any great photos, then hey, at least you spent some good time with some friends. After our time in Hudson Yards, we quickly made it downtown to catch the Staten Island ferry in hopes of getting a pretty good sunset. Every time I'm on the ferry, I am just blown away by the opportunities, the light, especially when you go at a time like this. I can really see this being a place I continuously come back to and maybe even work on a project about. And it wouldn't have been a day shooting with these two if we didn't end it in Times Square. I feel like every time I shoot with Austin and Mate, we end up in Times Square. It seems like some just running joke that ends up happening, but hey, Times Square, say what you want. I don't think it can ever get old. It's true craziness. It's the Shibuya crossing of New York. I also think it was fitting that we ended the day shooting somewhere we always end up at, despite seeing a new place. Novelty is such an interesting part of photography. I always like to look at photography as documenting what is interesting. And while that can come with some difficulties, as I talked about in my last video, it opens the door to so many opportunities. I try my best not to pigeonhole myself in photographing one thing, one subject matter, in one style. So why can't I do the same about where I shoot? There's so much to see in the town that we live in. We just need to do the hard part and actually go there. Now, with all that said, very much looking forward to hopping on a plane Sunday and going to Portugal next week. A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Building out your own visual portfolio online in the form of a website is a great exercise in curating your own work. It lets you experiment with showcasing select works, different styles, without the pressure of social media. Squarespace makes it really easy to creatively display your work however you please, and you don't need to have any clue of how to code a website. Their templates help so much in getting you off to a great start. If this sounds interesting to you, you can visit squarespace.com/Faizal and use the code Faizal at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase.